Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So I thank everybody for being here today, and I thank you too, Professor, for coming. So, in summary, or to start, I'll say that they chapter here at Southern, we recently are starting our new year. So, as a student organization on campus, we are interested in interviewing people that are, interesting and knowledgeable in topics of law and specialized legal fields in Louisiana, like juvenile law. And juvenile law is something that I didn't know about that I decided to take for an elective last year. And I was able to have Professor Nash Grant as a professor, and she was one of my favorite ones. And I'm not just saying that. It was a great class, learned a lot. So I'll introduce Professor Nash Grant. Yeah, I was just telling our group that if I'm not wrong, you were a Southern University Law Center grad in '83, and
1983,
you've been an attorney just started 42 years ago, right?
42 years ago. Yes.
That's been some career. So why don't you tell us, please, how you got in, how you decided you wanted to be an attorney, and how it was like going to Southern back in the '80s, because it's been quite some time since then, and maybe how things have changed, how things were back then, and any adversities or positive moments you'd like to share.
I wanted to be an attorney since I was 14 years old. At the time, President Nixon was the president, and this is in 1974. The Watergate scandal had come out where the Republican Party had bugged the Watergate, the Democratic Party's offices in the Watergate building. And a series of things happened. But what inspired me was the congressional hearings. And one congressman, Barbara Jordan, Black female, she was an attorney and she was chairman of the committee. And her opening statement just lifted me. I knew that I wanted to do that. She described her life and she described her passion for the Constitution of the United States and how relying upon the rule of law and the fact that it applied to all citizens was paramount, and that this was not about party or personality. It was about preserving the Constitution of the United States. After the congressional hearings began afterwards, President Nixon did resign. And I became a news junkie. In my home, my father and my mother both would read a lot. We had all the magazines, all the newspapers. My father subscribed to the New York Times and the Washington Post regularly. And so I just got involved in the law. And then I was always a talkative child and always could plead my own case for more snacks or more freedom or whatever. So it was a natural fit. But the light was lit by Barbara Jordan.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I sat by a Louisiana attorney on the plane ride back from DC last month, and she was working for the DOJ, but she's from Louisiana, and she said she would actually go and listen to those Watergate hearings. So, I
Wow.
mean, certainly super important thing. And I think we've all probably been guilty of trying our best to negotiate a better deal as a kid for those snacks or other things. And
Right.
so at the time, so when you started officially applying to law school, was Southern your only you knew you wanted to go to Southern, or did you have some other options, or how did that go?
Well, I did. At first, I was a radio and television broadcast major. I thought I was going to the University of Texas School of Broadcasting first because I wanted to combine my career. I wanted a career as a journalist, and then I wanted to be an attorney also. So I thought what I would do is apply to schools of communication, really highly rated ones, University of Texas, University of Missouri, Syracuse University had excellent programs, and I would go for a year, get my master's, and then go to law school. I was not thinking about Southern's law school. Of course, it was there because I went to Southern's undergraduate school. So at some point, I got a tap on the shoulder. I think it was a spiritual wake up that, you know what? Why are you wasting your time? Go ahead and go to law school. You know you want to go to law school. And then I chose Southern because it was familiar, because it was there. And then I met through a mentorship program, I met several female attorneys who had graduated from Southern. So that sealed the deal for me.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I recall in your class you telling us that you were a first time bar passer, which is what we're all striving for, and that's great to hear. So
Yeah.
tell me how it felt getting those results back, and then how quickly did you start practicing, or how quickly did you start game planning on what was next after those results came back?
Okay. So I started immediately. I was very impressed with myself. I had two uh, study partners, all female, all Black. Now, this is at a time where Southern's law school was integrated. So we had white classes, and there were one or two uh, Black students at LSU. Uh, our bar passage rate was low. Of course, we were founded because we were denied to go to other law schools based on race. And there was a thought that if you went to Southern's law school, you did not have a chance, surely, to pass the bar the first time. You might get it the third or fourth time. Back then, you could take the bar 11 times if you wanted to. But I did. I took the bar the first time. I prepared myself. I studied. And you know what? I believed in myself. I believed that I could do it. It didn't matter that I was Black, that I was at a HBCU, that I was female, because that's also an issue, Nicholas. It was very few women in my law school class. Um, and we had an administration that was all male, and it was thought that if you were in law school, a woman in law school was taking up a spot for uh, a man. And so I put all of that aside, and I prepared myself. So I did pass the bar the first time. I started working for Janice Clark, who eventually became a judge at the 19th Judicial District here in Baton Rouge. And I immediately started learning the practice of law. I was sworn in that Friday, and that Monday I had to go and argue a motion for continuance. So I started immediately.
That's great, and a great story there. And I recall when I started at Southern in 2022, one of the big brags that they would post on their kind of the welcome packet, or this the facts packet, was that Southern
Right,
has
right,
more female students than male.
right,
I thought that
right.
was great, and as you could see in our group here, I think Caleb and I are the only guys, and I'm all
Yeah.
for that. Uh, and Southern, we just saw Southern outdid Tulane University Law Center on bar passage rates. So
That's right.
I feel like
That
we're
is
we're doing some good things, and I'm sure you're happy about that, right?
Nicholas, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt you one more minute, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm bad, Nicholas. I'm so sorry. Let
That's
me
all good,
tell
all
your
good.
audience that my husband and I are caring for our 8-month-old grandson, and he's having a rough time with teething. Anyway, I did want to say this and about passing the bar the first time and about Southern University, if you will allow me. Um, you can allow people to take you out of the game with all the noise. You need to cancel the noise. All of you are students at Southern University, and guess what? It's the same law that they're teaching at Tulane. It's the same law that they are teaching at LSU, Loyola, Harvard, Yale. It's the same law. It's within you to succeed, and you have to cancel the noise. And that's what I did during a time in 1983. It was hard for women, and it was hard for Black attorneys. It was hard for Black attorneys who were female back in the 50s and the 60s, but they persevered and they pressed on. So let me tell you this story. And I've told this story many, many times. And lately, I have not had the opportunity to share with a group like this. I usually tell my students this story. So when I first started practicing, I did work for Judge Janice Clark. She was a private attorney at the time. And then I went to work for the state of Louisiana. I worked in the DCFS office for child support. And then I went to work for DCFS for children who had been removed from parents because of abuse and neglect. And I did all of the cases over 12 parishes from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, North and South. I would terminate the parental rights and let the children be free for adoption. And so I met often with the social workers who were working the cases, and they warned me. They said, now we're going to court Monday, and I'm going to warn you. We want to warn you that the attorney for the father is really horrible. I can't say the word she used because I'm being recorded. So she said, I said, that's fine. She said, well, what you need to know is he does not like Black people and he does not like women. And I said, oh my God, well, he's going to have a stroke when he sees me. But I felt confident. I was working for the great state of Louisiana. The law was on my side. I was prepared. So I got there to court and they pointed him out and they said, that's him. So I thought, okay, I'm going to disarm him. I walked up to him and I shook his hand and said, my name is Jaqueline Nash. I am the attorney on this case and I represent the great state of Louisiana. Well, he began coughing, really coughing. And he looked at me and he said, oh my goodness, it must be your perfume. And I thought, really? So I was patting his back, helping him. Then I really started knocking on his back. And I said, well, I'm sure that it is my perfume and you've never smelled this perfume because it's Joy and it's $150 an ounce. And he looked at me and I walked off and sat at counsel's table. So he asked me several questions and I would just answer yes or no, because at that point I was insulted. And the social workers were looking at me saying, we told you he is terrible. Okay. So he collected himself and he walked up to me and he said, you know what? Oh, how long you been working and blah, blah, blah. And what are you doing? And how many cases? Well, where did you go to law school? I say I attended and graduated from Southern University Law School. And he said, oh, yeah, how many times did it take you to pass the bar? And I looked at him and 1 second passed. I said, you can take the bar more than once? And he said, oh, he started stuttering and stammering. And he said, oh, well, yeah, yeah. And he explained to me about conditioning. You could condition. And he told me you could pass with 8 out of 10 bar sections, and you had to pass 3 out of 4 cold courses. I said, oh, well, I don't know because I graduated May 20th, 1983. I took the bar July 15th, 17th, and 19th, 1983, and I was sworn in October 7th, 1983. So, what happened at that moment was his attempt to make me less than. But nobody can define me. I am the author of the dictionary that defines me. And just because you went to Southern University, you're female, you're Black, oh, and they would be awful to the white students who went, because it was considered, oh, you went to Southern because you couldn't get in to LSU, or you couldn't get into Tulane, or you couldn't get into Loyola. And that was absolutely not the truth, even back in 1980 when I started law school. So when you get out and you start practicing law, people are going to try to put you in a box. What he did, not only could he not put me in a box, but he made me prepared. Every case I handle, I am prepared because I know people are going to make assumptions about my competence. So I always have to show out, and I show up for my clients, and I show up for Southern University.
That's great. I love that story. I got to hear it in juvenile law class too, juvenile justice, which is we'll get to that in a minute because that was a great class. So we do have a question. So I want to ask you my question first about how you got into juvenile law. And I will mention that you were the clinic director for the juvenile law clinic at Southern. So Miss Jones is asking, what is the program like, and how is it like for law students?
Okay, so clinical education programs are existed for 60 years all across the United States at law schools. And the mission of a clinical education program is two-pronged. It is to train students in the practical side of law. You sit in the class, you're lectured to, you study the theory. Clinical allows you, just like a doctor who does an internship, it allows you to practice law and have real live clients so that you can learn and you can be exposed to the practice of law. We're fortunate, we have 13 clinics, and juvenile clinic is just one of them, where our students, I almost said kids, I call y'all kids, our students get to handle cases. Yesterday, we had a case where y'all all studied about Boykin, y'all all studied about Miranda, you studied about suppressing evidence. Well, my students had all of those come up yesterday in a case. So the clinic does that. It gives you training, real life training, without having a real life bar. You ride on the professor's bar. Okay. The other prong is it provides needed representation to poor people. Now, there's a guarantee in criminal cases where citizens are prosecuted in the Sixth Amendment, right? The Sixth Amendment says you are guaranteed to have counsel, but there's no guarantee in a divorce. There's no guarantee to an attorney in a landlord tenant dispute. Okay. Uh, in other matters, Social Security benefits, food stamps benefits, and we provide services to indigent people in the clinic. So we open the door, we give access to justice in the clinical education program. And we have 13 clinics. We don't have the time now because I could do a whole 2 hours just talking about the clinics, but it is very worthwhile, and it's a means of giving back. That's something you got to do. Now, I want all of y'all to be $1 million lawyers, no question about it. I do, but I also want you to have a servant heart, right, Nicholas? I preach that in my class. Have a servant heart, that all your skills, your knowledge, you need to have a passion to help people who can't help themselves. You need to make sure that there's access to the court system, that a person's rights can be preserved and presented. And just because they can't afford to hire an attorney, that shouldn't be a barrier.
Right. And I remember our promise to you, right, was it one or two? We had to do
One
two,
case,
one
one
juvenile
case.
case a year.
And I make the students promise me that they will take one case, even if they are the CEO at Exxon, the general counsel at IBM. You tell them Professor Nash Grant says, I have to go down to the juvenile court and pick up a case, just one case a year, because that one case will not only impact that one child, it's going to impact that child's family, it's going to impact that child's education, everything that that child needs. It's not about just the little theft at Walmart. It's about addressing the holistic needs of that child. And if you just take one case, you'll be saying, Professor Nash made me promise to take this one case. And my God, I'm doing everything for this kid and for this family. And let me tell you something. If you're going to go out and hang your shingle, you go down and pick up a couple of cases in juvenile court, because once you represent the child and you do a good job, the parents, the grandparents, the uncles, the godparents, they will view you as their lawyer. I can't tell you the number of cases, good accident cases, good uh, toxic tort cases that I have gotten because I represented their grandson and I did a good job. So they viewed me as a lawyer and they call me and say, can you handle this? I know you just work with children, but I got this kind of case.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about juvenile court, Professor, because, you know, I think a lot of people, including myself before I took your class, didn't know or don't know a lot about juvenile law. So obviously, as you taught us, it's in a separate courtroom kind of near the campus, if I'm not wrong, the local cases. But also the juveniles, things are different. The biggest one I could think of is they're not really afforded a jury of their peers as we are as adults. And obviously things are a little bit different in terms of, I guess, their propensity and when can they be tried as an adult and when can their
Right,
can their record can
right.
it go on their record? So what's the difference between, a child in the judiciary system being tried versus an adult?
Okay, so the main difference is the thrust is rehabilitation. The thrust, the main, what did I tell you? The overarching theme in the juvenile system is what's in the best interest of the child. And that goes across all cases that are handled in juvenile court. The other thing is there are differences because juvenile court was born out of the necessity of what to do with children. Children don't have contractual capacity. Children are always subject to what? Custody. Who has custody? Who has say so over a child, right? So you have to look at how you deliver legal services, how you preserve the constitutional rights of a child, and that has to be done separately from adult court. And you already mentioned, Nicholas, the main difference in criminal cases is there's no jury. It's all bench trials, no jury, no jury in criminal cases. Although the children commit the same crimes. Children commit rape, robbery, armed robbery, extortion, arson. aggravated battery, simple theft, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, all the crimes you learned in your criminal procedure class and criminal law classes. Yeah, children commit them, but how they are prosecuted is different. It's the same thing, it's still a prosecution. There's no grand jury. There's the Department of Juvenile Services that decides if a child should be charged. An arrest is made. They most cases go to custodial release, where they just release the child and they send them a letter and say, come back to court on this day, or we've decided not to prosecute the kid. That the judge and the DA never sees. That decision is made by the Department of Juvenile Services. I call them the super grand jury. And we look at rehabilitation in delinquency cases, and we also, and that's different because it's not a main thrust for adults rehabilitation. They just look at punishment. So with a child, you're looking to alleviate and eliminate the issues that brought the child to the system. How do we fix it? How do we repair it? We also look at rehabilitating the family. When the family unit is broken down, that's in sync cases, child in need of care cases. Uh, those cases are when a child is removed because of allegations of abuse and neglect. Um, we want to rehabilitate the family because at all times we want a child in a family. Now, sometimes a family doesn't look like a mom and dad and 2.5 kids who live in the suburb in a house. Sometimes it doesn't look like that. But whatever family looks like, every child deserves that. Okay. Then we have the families in need of services cases, FINS cases. Those deal with status offenses. And status offenses are offenses, they're quasi crimes. It's what a child cannot do, like truancy. That's because, and well, let me stop. Let me not assume you know what truancy is. Truancy is when a child misses too much school. They're truant. They don't go to school because there's a mandatory, compulsory law that says children must go to school up to age 16. Up to age 16. So if a child is not attending school, we have an entire administrative process before it gets to a judge. And truancy is an issue. Now, another status offense is underage drinking or ungovernable, when the child is out of control at school, out of control at home, where the penalty is not jail. The penalty is that child is removed from their parents' custody. And that's a big penalty. That's a penalty because what happens? You destroy the family unit. And we always want to preserve the family unit, but if something is going on wrong, if something is bad is happening to the children, the state steps in with their compelling interests. They remove the children and set about looking for a way to make sure a child is not at risk of harm, that a child is in a family, whatever family looks like for that child, that the child has a chance to grow up, to be educated, and to become productive citizens. And that can be best borne out in a family. And so we look to rehab the family. We rehab the offender, the criminal. I don't like to say call children criminals, but we seek to do that. That's the major difference. And we are driven by what's in the best interest of a child. And sometimes the best interest of the child is to take them away from the mom and dad who are abusive or neglective or on drugs. But even before we do that, we may remove them, but their the custody and their parenthood is decided after a period of time to rehab that situation, to eliminate and eradicate the problems that brought the children into care.
Yeah, so Professor, that brings me to a good point. So, and again, it's bad to generalize problems, but what are is there an overwhelming cause for delinquency? I mean, obviously, as kids, we may have unfortunately witnessed some of our classmates or friends get tied up in the wrong groups of people, and that's, a big problem. Bad parenting could be a problem. Is there one overwhelming cause for children to end up doing illegal acts?
Well, I don't think it's one. You just, without knowing, without realizing, you just counted two factors. There are factors that drive delinquency. Uh, Peer pressure is one. Another factor is the adolescent mind does not develop. Remember, I showed y'all the unit on neuroscience of adolescence, the study of the brain, where you develop good judgment, make good decisions. That doesn't develop, especially for boys. I know it's two fellas in here, and I shout out to the guys. I always want men in my clinic class. Um, they don't develop those ladies until they're 25 years old. That's science. So that's a factor. Peer pressure, the inability to make good decisions, parenting, poor parenting, uh, especially when you have parents who have children 14 and 15 years old, well, they haven't developed. And so it's true, it's an old adage, children having children. That's a bad scene. Another factor is education and exposure. A lot of teenage parents who are raising children, they were raised by young parents. They don't have parenting skills. They haven't developed how you raise a child. My 8 month old just almost took me out. We almost couldn't have this meeting. And I have all of the knowledge, all of the education in the world. And I've read all the psychology journals on how to raise a child. And I raised my son, but I completely went to pieces. And my husband said, "Go on, I got him. He can cry." And the 8 month old stopped this seminar. So, not having good parenting skills. And another factor, I don't know if you thought about this, is poverty. Poverty drives ill making decisions. Sometimes poor kids steal, and we'll get a client and they say they stole something in Walmart. And the first thing I do is look at the police report because I want to see the inventory. I want to know what they stole. And they stole juice and diapers and wipes and clothes. What does that tell me? That tells me that child stole out of necessity. There's no food. You go to the mom, she's not getting food stamps. It's five kids in the house. She works. She locks the door, and the 9 year old is taking care of the kids. No access to a babysitter and daycare. Poverty. poverty, she can't pay the $500 up to $1,200 a month for childcare. She doesn't make $500 a month. So poverty sometimes drives the delinquency. Now, sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes they commit thefts at Walmart and it's all those video games. So that's just being foolish. That's just being dumb. That's taking it on a dare, seeing what they could get away with. But all of those factors, and others that I haven't enumerated, really drive delinquency. And what we do with children, more so than they do with adults, we try to find out what is behind this. What is behind this action or inaction? What happened? What happened that this child was neglected, even in SINC cases? What is going on that the child is not attending school in the family in need of services status offense cases? Why has the child missed 56 days? So we look at all of those factors and then we have an answer. If it's poor parenting skills, we have parenting classes. If it's the child was being reared by the grandmother and the grandmother died, the child never lived with the mother is on drugs and she doesn't care, we look for other custodians and we put the child in grief counseling. You see, so we look beyond the action or the inaction and try to say, what are the factors? We tick them off, and then we look at it case by case, child by child.
Yeah, and Professor, one of the good things or one of the central focuses of our state legislatures is to identify problems with the law, whether there is conflicting law, an absence of law, need for law, and to draft and pass those laws. And sometimes there's issues where the law is causing an effect that is against public policy and practice um, that was accidental. But so obviously we have lots of problems with our adult system and just the carceral state of this country. A lot of people in prison despite not that much crime, a lot of repeat offenses due to, certain um, issues of people getting back on their feet. But it does seem that the country knows of and cares of juvenile issues. I mean, this is obviously a federal issue, but I appreciated DACA. These children have been brought to the country under less than legal means, but it's not their fault, and some of them don't even know their statuses until college, until they start filling out these college applications. So the federal government decided to give them some amnesty there. So in your years of practice, have there been any big issues that you were proud of the Louisiana legislature for addressing? Um, and what were those?
I think the last 5 years, well, now 7 years ago in 2019, Louisiana stepped forward and said, no longer will we cut loose an 18-year-old in state's custody and just give them a pat on the back, a suitcase with some clothes in it, and say bye bye. You're grown now. Because, I don't believe you are an adult just because you're 18 years old. And a child who has grown up in foster care for whatever reason is not ready to take on the world. That's why all of you went to college. You were not ready to take on paying for rent, buying a car. When my son first got his first check and saw FICA, he said, "Why is FICA robbing me? They take a lot of money. Who is FICA?" Yeah. So you can imagine a kid who is just getting out of high school. So I was so proud that Louisiana extended it. Now, a child can stay in state's custody up until age 21. And the time period between 18 and 21, they put them on the path of independent living. They're still in state's custody technically, okay? Because, custody expires. So by operation of law, they are still custodians of the state, and the state provides them, helps them get a job. So we have one client. She's a student at Southern University now, and when she turns 21, she will graduate. She started at 17. She will graduate in 2028 with a degree in engineering. She would not have had that opportunity if she was cut loose at 18. And this is why she wouldn't have, for example, financial aid. You have to put down all of your parents' information, right? At least the first semester, first year you're in school, she would not have had that. It would have been difficult. She would have had to do jumped a lot of hoops. This way, she has the state backing her, helping her fill out everything. And she was brilliant. She made a 34 on the ACT. She got a full ride and everything at Southern and lived in the dormitory. We did an emancipation, so she was 17 years old coming into the dorm, but she had the backing of the state. She gets a stipend, she gets to work, they take her money, they give her X number of dollars, she could apply. So, what I'm saying is, I've been angry with the state of Louisiana, how they treat children. But that was one of my proudest moments. And I now have a client who has benefited from it. Some kids don't want it. They said, this is enough involvement in my life. I don't want it. I don't care. But it has been very beneficial moving that up. And other states have done it and are doing it. But Louisiana was kind of out in the front, raising that foster care age to 21.
Great. And I think that kind of answered one of my last questions of like a proud moment of yours. And that's great to hear. We've got about 10 minutes left. So
Okay.
if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand or type
Oh,
in the
now I
chat.
see in the chat, is your name Tyjun? Tajun, I do not like to mispronounce people's names, so please pronounce your name for me.
It's Tajane.
Tajane Jones. So, Miss Jones, you have an interest in taking the juvenile law clinic?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
So it is surprisingly so because most of the 3Ls sign up and take one of the clinics. Um, it's a class. It's an actual class. It'll be on your registration schedule of courses, and it's a 3 credit class. In juvenile, we don't meet on campus. We meet at the juvenile court, whether we have a case on the docket or not, because sometimes you can just sit and watch a case and learn something. Okay. Even me, headed to my 43 years of practice, I learn something every day in court. But you take the class, I usually assign you to 2 cases. We are appointed.
Hmm.
Remember that we represent indigent people. Um, and the court, the 2 judges in East Baton Rouge, we only practice in East Baton Rouge, and Nicholas is right down the street. Juvenile court is on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. I bet no one knows where that street is. So I simply say it's on the same street where the Baton Rouge Airport is. So students can get out of class and get to juvenile court. Now, the class is scheduled 10 to 11 15. But I tell students, try very hard not to take a class before clinic if you can. Don't take a class before because court actually starts at 9. But the judges and all the court personnel and the private attorneys, they love the students. They encourage the students. They teach the students with me, and we will allow you to come whenever you get to some last semester. Some of my students had a class that ended at 10. They got to court by 10:10, and we put their cases at the end of the docket. But I sit second chair. I prepare you. It's your client, your case. You'll do motions, you'll argue motions, you'll file motions, you will read police reports, you'll interview court personnel, you'll negotiate with the DA, you'll talk to your client and build a rapport with your client. So if you're interested, it's fast paced. Juvenile clinic is fast paced. It's not like adults. If they are in the detention center and they don't bond out, they shall go to trial within 30 days. And 30 days is fast, fast, fast. And when we don't have social workers, we don't have investigators. So you have to be your own social worker and your own investigator, but we get the job done. And we handle all facets. We handle child in need of care cases, we handle truancy cases, status offense cases, but the bulk of our docket is criminal cases, delinquency cases.
And Professor, I wonder if a student, has done a clinic already or has done an externship already, I wonder if they would be permitted to take another one and take juvenile clinic too as sort of an
Oh, oh,
elective.
absolutely, because it's a class. So you can take juvenile clinic in the fall and mediation in the spring. You could take criminal clinic and then take juvenile clinic. And with the addition of the evening program, we now allow students, because some evening students, first you have to be qualified to take it. To be eligible to take clinic, you have to have had ethics, professional responsibility, and evidence, those 2 classes, okay? And some of our evening students get it, and some students take stuff in the summer. So 2L evening students have taken 3 and sometimes 4. I had a student, Mr. Saeed, he took 4 clinic classes. And you don't have, just because you took juvenile doesn't mean you can't take one of the other clinics.
It's great to hear. Great to hear. Yeah, if anybody has any more questions, feel free to ask. But
Well, let me do this. My email address is jnash@sulc.edu. jnash@sulc.edu. You can email me, and Nicholas will tell you. You have to email me and then send me your number. I will call you back, but send me a text first because I don't answer calls I don't know. I'll be happy to talk to you. Happy, happy, happy to talk to y'all. And if you want me to come back, Nicholas, I can come back because I feel like I cheated you out of about
no,
15 minutes.
it was great. I always love talking, and I would implore our members here to take one of your courses because I took one of them and it was wonderful, wonderful elective, and
Well, thank you.
we need to do another one. And sometimes it's a little difficult getting a room booked, on campus, but we totally can. So I would love to do something, at the moot court room. And I'm
That's
sure, Professor, if any of our students would like to come sit in one day on your juvenile justice class, that would probably be okay, right?
sure. Sure.
Are you still in the
This
moot
semester
courtroom?
we're teaching in 170. I moved it from the book courtroom. I'm in
170.
170. And then if you want to take, I always teach, I'll be on the course scheduled to teach trial advocacy in the fall. And I teach juvenile justice and clinic every semester.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you for this
Professor.
opportunity. And I want y'all to know I'm very proud of you. And I believe you can do it. And I believe you can pass the bar the first time.
Amen. I hope so, and I'm praying too. But I'm very confident in everybody else. And again, I appreciate you. We'll have to do it again, and getting a lot of thank yous in the comments here. So thank you so much, Professor, and
Thank
we'll
y'all.
love to have you
Thank you.
again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay, y'all take care.